Good afternoon, folks. This afternoon's topic A is about grief in caregiving. Okay, so we're going to go through a little essay I made, little presentation, and dig into the subject of grief in caregiving. Title for this one: Grief, Identity, and Policy Failure Beneath Them. Grief in caregiving is often described as personal, intimate, in interior, something that happens quietly inside families. But the grief caregivers carry is not only emotional, it is structural. It is the grief of realizing that the identity shift you are undergoing is not simply a natural part of aging families, but a consequence of a system that has left you no alternative. You grieve because you are becoming someone you never expected to be. You into you are stepping into was supposed to be supported. You grieve because the weight you are carrying was never meant to rest on one pair of shoulders. And that grief is a policy signal. The private grief that reveals a public problem. The moment you start worrying about your parents, really worrying, you feel the first tug of identity change. You become the watcher, the planner, the one who anticipates needs before they are spoken. You become the person who sees the decline others miss. You become the one who absorbs the emotional cost of noticing. Because, er, but beneath that private noticing is a public truth. You are doing this because the long-term care system is not. Every time you refill a pillbox, you are compensating for a workforce shortage. Every time you manage a crisis alone, you are filling the gap left by fragmented home care coverage. Every time you rearrange your work schedule, you are subsidizing a system that relies on unpaid labor. Your grief is not just about your parents changing. It is about realizing the country has quietly delegated their own or delegated their care to you. Identity shift is is unpaid labor. Caregiving changes who you are. It reshapes your days, your priorities, your sense of self, because um, you become someone who can hold fear and tenderness at the same time. Someone who can make medical decisions at noon and soothe panic at midnight. Someone who can carry grief in one hand and logistics in another. But identity shift is not only emotional, it's economic. When you become a caregiver, you also become an unpaid coordinator, an unpaid care coordinator, a de facto case manager, a substitute home care worker, a transportation service, a safety net provider. You become the infrastructure that does not exist. And the grief you feel, the grief of losing your old life, your old relationship, your old sense of ease, is intensified by the knowledge that you are doing this alone because policy has not caught up to demographic reality. The systematic roots of personal grief. The identity transformation caregivers undergo is not simply a family story, it is a policy failure with emotional consequences. Families grieve because home care workers are unpaid and in short supply. Medicaid waivers have years long wait lists. Assisted living is financially inaccessible for most families. Nursing homes are understaffed and uneven in quality. Dementia care is soloed, inconsistent, and often unaffordable. There are no national long term care benefits. Caregiver support programs are patchwork, underfunded, and hard to access. You grieve, your grief is not just anticipatory loss, it is the grief of being drafted into a role the system should have prepared for and didn't. Your identity shift is not just an emotional evolution. It is the transformation required. When public policy leaves families to absorb the responsibilities of a failing infrastructure, the emotional labor that should be recognized as policy data when caregivers describe their grief, the exhaustion, the vigilance, the fear of making the wrong decision, They are offering policymakers real time evidence of system strain. Grief is not data, grief is data. Identity shift is data. The emotional burden families carry is data. It tells us the system is too thin, the workforce is too small, the financial burden is too high, the navigation is too complex, the responsibility is too concentrated, the safety net is too fragile. Caregiver grief is not just private sorrow, it is a public indicator. The policy imperative hidden inside the emotional story. When you learn to love your parents without needing them to be who they once were, you are doing profound emotional work. But you are also doing unpaid labor that the country depends on. When you sit with your mother as she folds the same towel 3 times, you are offering dementia competent care. When you listen to your father tell a story with missing pieces, you are providing cognitive support. When you manage medications, appointments, transportation, and crises, you are performing tasks that would that would otherwise fall to paid workforce. Your grief is not a weakness. Your identity shift is not private evolution. They are evidence of a system that relies on family devotion to compensate for structural neglect. And that is the heart of the policy narrative. Caregiver grief is not just emotional, it's structural. Caregiver identity shift is not just personal, it is political. The call to action embedded in the caregiver hearts. When families step into caregiving roles, they are doing what love requires. But when policymakers fail to build the systems that support aging, they are asking families to do what policy should provide. The grief caregivers carry is a map. The identity shift they undergo is a warning. The emotional labor they perform is a demand for reform. Caregiving is not only a family transition, it is a public responsibility. And the grief and identity work caregivers endure should be treated as evidence, not background noise. The national conversation about long term care Okay, the second half of this, guys, is a narrative I wrote for you. The intimate scenes where where caregiving begins. The first signs. It starts with small things. The kind families dismiss for months because acknowledging them feels like opening a door you can't close again. Your mother begins misplacing her reading glasses, not occasionally, but daily. You find them in the freezer, once next to a bag of blueberries she swears she bought yesterday. She laughs it off, and you laugh with her. But something inside you tightens. Your father starts telling you this, the same story twice in one visit. It's a story you've heard your whole life. The one about the fishing trip where he caught nothing but a sunburn. But now he tells it with slight variations as he's stretching, as if he's stretching for the version that feels the most true. You nod along, even though you know he told it an hour ago. These moments accumulate quietly like snow on a roof. At first, you don't feel like the weight. Then one day you do. The kitchen table. The kitchen becomes the stage where the caregiving transformation transition plays out. You sit at the table with your mother, sorting the mail. She opens the same envelope twice. She asks whether the electric bill has been paid, even though you watched her write the check yesterday. You notice the way she watches your hands as you organize the papers, the way her eyes follow the movements, as if she's trying to memorize sequence she once knew by heart. Your father hovers nearby, pretending not to listen. He clears his throat when you mention calling the doctor. He says he's fine. He says he doesn't need help. He says he's just tired. You hear the fear beneath the words. You feel your own fear rising to meet it. This is the moment you realize caregiving is not just logistics, it's a choreography, a delicate dance of reassurance, truth telling, and silence. The drive home. The drive home becomes its own ritual. You replay the visit in your mind, cataloging details the way clinicians do. Repetition, confusion, hesitation, mood. You tell yourself you're overwhelming or overreaching. You tell yourself it is normal aging. You tell yourself you are imagining things. But you also know in the quiet, honest part of yourself that you are already becoming someone new, someone who watches closely, someone who anticipates, someone who carries worry like a second heartbeat. This is the identity shift no one warns you about. The, the phone call. One evening, your mother calls, her voice thin and uncertain. She can't remember how to log into the bank account. She says the screen looks different. She says she's sure something is wrong. You drive over. You sit beside her at the computer. The screen is exactly the same. She looks at you with relief so profound it breaks something open inside you. You realize she trusts you more than she trusts herself now. You realize she needs you in a way she has never has. You realize you're becoming her memory, her safety net, her anchor. And you grieve not because she is failing, but because the relationship is changing. You gather at the dining room table, the same table where birthdays were celebrated, where homework was done, where your parents once sat with you with authority and ease. Now they sit with uncertainty, waiting for you to speak. You talk about medications, appointments, driving safety. You try to keep your voice steady. You try to make it sound like planning, not loss. Your father Brussels. Your mother nods. You feel the weight of being the one who sees what must be said. This is the moment you understand that caregiving is not simply stepping in, it is stepping up, it is stepping forward, it is stepping into a role shaped by love and, and necessity and grief. The policy thread beneath the family story. And beneath all of this, the freezer, glasses, the repeated stories, the kitchen table, that have the drive home, the phone call, the family meeting, lies the policy truth. You're doing this because the system is not. Your family story is not an anomaly. It is a case study. Your grief is not just emotional, it is structural. Your identity shift is not just just personal, it is political. Every moment you spend filling gaps, coordinating care, managing medications, navigating insurance, providing cognitive supports is evidence of long-term care infrastructure that relies on families to absorb what policy has failed to build. Your family's narrative is the nation's narrative. Your grief is the country's unspoken data. Your identity shift is the signal that reform is overdue. Okay, guys, I'll be back on shortly with another. Let me take a little break